it's Monday, beginning of another week. Welcome to the show. I am Morayo Afolabi Brown. As always, I have the ladies. Hello, good morning. Hi. How are you guys doing, Mariam?
We're doing good.
Thinking of taking a selfie?
No, why?
Because your picture was in camera, so I was
Oh, no, I was just of the papers.
Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm not going to lament,
Okay.
but I'm in a lamentable mood because of traffic. But I'm just going to say my banter that I plan to say.
Which is?
So I used my weekend, I read a couple of books.
Oh.
As well, yeah. Yeah.
Online?
No. Physical
Actual books.
books, yeah. So there's this one, Smart Money Woman. So she's written another one, you know, and it's really about women and how they can help themselves financially. And it's true, you know, women, we come together to buy a shabby, we come together to go for parties, we come together to, you know, do things like that. But when it comes to what's important, like our finances, we don't come together, you know, to help each other, build each other up financially. And men do that, yeah. We hardly ever do it. Men do that quite often. So that book really opened my eyes to how, you know, women can collaborate with each other financially and build each other up.
Nice.
So, yeah. We're already thinking about it anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, the things we're already doing, it just seems like...
It just seems right.
Fantastic.
Fate.
Okay, I guess
I have to say about that. Let me just say it quickly, because sometimes you look at the usual regular things and expect it from there. So I was privileged to live in a local environment, and I found the women helping each other financially to do their business. So every weekend they come together, put money together, and any of them who has a business idea can borrow from that money and do the business. And at the end of the year, if they don't have to borrow...
So we became too tush,
so
and they became very independent.
We became too posh. That's where I live. And then when they, at the end of the year, if they've not borrowed too much, they can share everybody's money back to everybody.
Do you know, that's what that book's about, exactly what you've just said.
I'm telling you that I now, for the past 3 years, I've been the secretary collecting the money to the bank and giving out loans to them if they need to do their business. And who is educated, who is not educated, everybody that is not even amongst them.
I guess, I mean, I lost quite a bit of money in the past. I'm always so weary of getting involved. I always have that phobia for just doing anything. I lost a whole lot of money in the past to the stock market. So I get really weary. But I mean, it's been nice to see other ideas that women can invest in. How are you doing, Tokwe?
I'm very good.
I like your earrings.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's from Agbenga Artsmith.
wow.
He gave us that time. Everybody earrings.
You always follow up with people like that. You
No, he gave.
I know he gave us, but afterwards,
okay. It's in my industry. So
wow, fantastic.
yeah. Last week Monday we had a guest on the show, Dr. Yewande Austin, and she's not a Nigerian. She's actually from the US. And I went for a program in Abuja, and I met IDPs that have now moved. That she helped. Like, this is not a Nigerian.
Friday.
On Friday. These are human beings that she was talking about how she used to call Dr. Yewande to help her through the process and how she was sending money. And I know that it wasn't like Yewande has a lot of money. It's just the idea that she just felt that compassion within herself. And I look at it that we Nigerians here, we're not seeing the pains of what is going on at the IDPs. We don't understand what they're going through. One lady shared her story. She's educated, spoke very well, and simply because there was a bomb attack in her area, she became an IDP. And if her life had not taken, as a younger sister was raped, if she wasn't rescued out of that place, that could have been her own story too, that she would have gotten raped, and that would have been the end of her life. And she had every privilege, like all of us,
So
just was in the loss.
You?
So I just feel that I'm becoming more sensitive to the grace I have to be in Lagos where there is peace so far, and then I want to extend my the leverage of what I have here on this show to bring information to what is going on in these areas and how we can in our little ways help.
Fantastic.
You know.
Nice, good to know
We really
that.
can. I was really done.
Most of the time, we just think these people were not anything to begin with.
No,
so maybe
we think that it's the poor.
Yeah.
It's geez, it was really touching.
All right, unfortunately, we're out of time.
You traveled?
It's 6
I mean, we missed you last week.
Yes, and you just went and you want to come back and just do
No, I can't. I mean, I went out. It was a job I had to do, and I was excited about it. It's something I'll probably share a bit later. It's still cooking. Once it's Gino, right now it's still cooking. But I thank God for the experience. It was a good time. It was a good learning experience for me, and I'm happy that God has been making me quite busy recently. So I'm happy about that. Okay, let's go on a break. When we come back, we'll go through the front pages of the newspapers. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We're back. We're going to start with The Nation. New wage showdown as workers, government stick to guns. Firm under probe over 72 billionaire expatriate permit card cash. CBN defends Naira with $8.28 billion forex sales. Breakaway ASU faction seeks registration. Mercy wins BB Nigeria's 30 million naira on SUV. May become chief. Ponle finds love again. All right. Let's start with the new wage, the new wage issue, and then we'll come to the love story.
Okay, so the new wage, there's most likely going to be a showdown, but the federal government and Labour are meeting over the level 7 to 17 sharing formula, whatever. What am I supposed to call it?
So what happened, let me tell you, Nima, is the fact that federal government is proposing 11% to 11% for increase between level 7 to 14, and I think 6.5% increase from level 15 to 17. The government, the governors, on the other hand, are proposing 9%, but Labour is demanding 24% increment on those from level 7 to 17. So that's where the issue is, and there's a gridlock on that. So hopefully they are going to have continuous meetings, and we'll see if we can actually get this done. Love story, please. Who has that love story?
You have the love story.
I do? Yes. Okay. So, I don't know much about MIPCOM Chief. He's actually supposed to be a philanthropist, supposed to be someone that, I think he's hotel and tours, a golf course. So he's a popular person in Osun State, actually.
A
wealthy man, very wealthy man, and he's the owner of a golf club and hotels.
Wow.
What we know is the former deputy governor of Osun State, Mrs. Tomori, or former Mrs. Tomori. Now she's Mrs. Kwanle. Interestingly, they've been dating for a while, and they took permission from their children and grandchildren.
78 and 70.
He's 79.
He'll be 79
in December.
She'll be 70 in December as well.
70, so they're both December babies.
I love it.
And
everything.
He's 79. Like, life isn't over, and that's what I want us to celebrate about it.
My mommy, you're in the US right now. My mother is just 73, right?
Please go and fall in love.
Exactly.
You have my approval. You got to do this, man. You have my own approval. I don't know my brother's
your last days.
My brothers might not find it funny, but me, you have my approval. Okay, let's move on to the punch. Mrs. Tomori that sat down here looking all too shady. So she was there doing love all over place. Okay, sorry, let's move on to the punch. Okay, faction emerges in ASU as lecturers attack varsity heads. Ekiti communities cut off as flood destroys bridge. Man catches Ogun suspected ritualist with mom's skull. No ethnic group has monopoly to rule Nigeria, says Bakari. Mercy emerges winner of Big Brother Nigeria and grabs 60 million naira worth of prize. Ex-NHIS boss fails to return 150 million naira worth of vehicles after his sacking. Why I airlifted Nigerians from South Africa, says AFP's boss. Okay, let's start with the major headline. ASU, then we'll talk about the human interest.
So there's a new...
Okay, go ahead.
There's a new coalition of... there's a breakup within ASU. So they now formed a new group called Congress of University Academics. And they are now, they've gone ahead to seek to be registered. They have a mandate of saying that they want to unify the university calendar, and they want to improve the quality of education at the Ivory Towers and enhance innovation in the system. They also intend to work with teachers at the secondary school level to ensure that the quality of students that come into the university improves, considering what is going on right now. What? The current ASU are kicking against it, that they're trying to cause division with it.
I just say that they're not interested, that their own function is still there, but they're not even interested.
ASU alleges that some VCs who are who have been sanctioned and been punished, they were the ones who formed this.
The picture story, yes.
Yes, go ahead, please.
So these communities in Ekiti State, Okiako Ekiti and Irele Ekiti, have found themselves, they are now they found the bridge that connects these two communities has finally collapsed due to the heavy rains, and it's causing a lot of problems for them. Residents are afraid that, if in case of emergencies, one of the communities, they will not be able to access hospitals.
Yeah, and this is yam season.
Yes, and then farmers as well who have done, who have farmed and harvested are unable to move their produce from farms to the markets.
The government has responded.
Yes.
The governor has responded.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, the governor has responded that he would construct the bridge as governor Kayode Fayemi.
Okay.
As
All right, but I don't know how long that will take because this is going to. But let's talk about the human interest story very quickly before we run off.
So the human interest story: the Ogun State Police Command arrested one Emmanuel Aru, a 25-year-old, and Anu Olofinju, another 25-year-old. they arrested them and found in their possession the skull of a woman whose son saw them digging his mother's grave, and alerted the police. And they've been arrested.
Really sad story,
They
indeed.
they admitted they wanted to use it for ritual purposes.
We need to find out where they take these things to, so that we understand why
How
they
do
are.
they even do it? They should come and start with the chicken skull. Man.
Let's move on now to Vanguard. Why we oppose return of toll gate, says Labour. Adeboye to Osinbajo, don't be fazed by gang ups against you. No epidemic in Queen's College, says Lagos State Government.
Okay.
Bakari task Buhari on insecurity. As a declaration, level of compliance not encouraged, says Code of Conduct Bureau. Insecurity, recruitment of 10,000 policemen flops as PSC and IGP bicker. ASU splits as new academic union emerges. And our leaders not ready to sacrifice, says Mogalu. Okay, let's start with Adeboye and to Osinbajo. Who has that story?
It's as simple as saying that...
He wasn't there physically. He actually had a representative who was speaking on his behalf.
And the person was saying that, that Adeboye had prayed with Osinbajo, and the word from God for him was that he shouldn't be worried about, he shouldn't be fazed about what is going on, and that he would
That he's like Saul, that he'll be all right.
He would overcome.
That,
So it's pretty straightforward.
The Queen's College, who has that story, I think it was the Minister of Health actually went there. He was on ground. The Minister himself.
The Commissioner for Health.
The Commissioner,
Lagos
I think
State.
Minister of Health. Commissioner for Health. Thank you very much for correcting that. Of Health in Lagos State went there to inspect and said that he has interviewed the children. They are fine. The parents. The sick bay was practically empty, and there's no breakout of any epidemic in Queen's College. And people should stop this propaganda and all this fear around concerning Queen's College. And everything is under control.
So those 700 students were not...
They could have been trying to get home.
Yeah.
A whole 700
It could be
students.
panic. But because I feel like Lagos State is a bit neutral, being that they are not the supervising ministry or body over that school, they went in to do a neutral check, and they came with their report. There's a story we skipped in Punch that I wanted us to quickly take. So the NHIS boss, former NHIS boss, Yusuf, was sacked 3 months ago, and he has vehicle worth 150 million naira that he hasn't returned. And even though he was held that he's being asked to return them, he hasn't. And the EFCC is saying that this is condemnable. The fight against anti-corruption isn't being adhered to. So basically, we're just shouting, return our cars, please. It belongs to
Daily
Nigeria.
Sun, volume 150 million. Sources plot Vice President Osinbajo's exits. More on against treatment. Mercy merges. Nobody wants to talk about Big Brother. Okay, no worry, let's move on. 2023, presidency should be zoned to Southeast, says Civil Liberty Organization, I believe. Tension in Akwa Ibom as herders kill another native. Insurgent ambush killed 11 soldiers. And that's the other story. Yes, which story?
Yes, I took the Akwa Ibom story.
Go ahead.
Another sad story. They're alleging that herders killed a farmer in this community in Akwa Ibom State. He had gone to his farm. The herders wanted their cattle to graze on his farm, and of course, they had so they had a disagreement, and they said that they used machetes and cutlass on his body, and as a result of the wounds, he died. And they're saying that this is the second time in 2 months, I think, that this has happened. So I hope that the government looks into this. Let us be sure exactly who these herders are. And
justice is served so that people don't take arms into their hands.
Okay, let's move on. Nobody else saw the Osinbajo story. But
well, let's celebrate with mercy, because a lot of our fans are... Yes, it's everywhere. So
you watched this? You didn't
No, I didn't watch any of what was happening in Big Brother, but millions of Nigerians watched it.
Okay.
And she's won the love of many people and now won 30 million naira in addition to a brand new SUV. Congratulations to her. Can we now move on to something?
What is more striking of that is the fact that she got 38 million votes. Where were these 38 million when we voted? We're looking for people to collect their PVCs. We'll come to them. Go look for PVCs to vote in. The second person,
they paid to vote.
The point is that so the point is that young people actually know where their interests are. Because 38 million people. They had about 240 million in total.
So
there's a lot to talk about in this show. 240
million naira. Let's assume everybody paid to vote. It's 30 naira times that amount will give us about 7.2 trillion naira, and she only went on with about.
So maybe government should look at
about
electronic
60 million
voting
of it
going forward.
Yeah.
So we should do the math.
Thank you very much, Miriam, because that was where the conversation was going. That they keep talking about we need to change how our electronic system is. The voting system is. And this is an indication that we need to take this issue seriously. And members in the House, we need electronic voting because people can actually vote with the convenience on their homes. Yeah. And that's the only way we can actually do real figures on these of our leaders, because what we're doing right now, we only have, 14 or 10 million people that actually come out to vote every year.
Well, you know, there are many people, repeated voters trying to get in the person they desire to win. So people were really invested in this thing. Can we be more invested in our country?
Let's just pick one more story, one more paper. The Nigerian Tribune. ASU splits, federal government confirms application for new union. Over 900 billion naira diverted constituency projects recovered from 12 states, says ICPC. Lagos to enforce law on meat hygiene. Please, very required. We got our victims on social media, says South Africa returning nabbed for robbery. And the governor of Edo State Governor, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, got the award for World Teachers' Day celebration. It was Best Governor Honor 2019.
Oh,
and that was well-deserved honor. Okay.
So I have two stories in the Tribune, but I'm looking to get to the Guardian.
Just that headline alone.
Fresh controversy over Abalaka's HIV cure claims. Let's talk about that. I'm actually interested in that story too.
Abalaka is Dr. Jeremiah Ojenemi Alabi Abalaka, who's been claiming to have cure for HIV, hepatitis, and several other viral infections, like sexually transmitted infections like that. He's claimed that, you know, in testing the treatment, he's carried it out on himself and also injected himself, and that he's never been found, you know, to be positive with HIV. And he's called on everybody in Nigeria. Now, within the medical goods, there's a division. The head of the residency doctors is saying, let's try local options. Let's give him a try. Let's government support him. But the head of the medical guild, president of that, is saying, lie, there's nothing. The government should. I think we should try.
Yeah. What's even annoying is that one of the issues they raised is the fact that he did not use the right procedure that usually use guinea pigs for this kind of test. That was the procedural issue they were having. However, I think all their objections are not scientific. They are just based on administrative. So we need proper investigation on what he has, and let's be sure.
I remember this from when
unfortunately, we spent quite a bit of time on it. Let's go on a break. When we come back, we'll be discussing the issues of taxes. Nigerians are saying that this recent increase from phone taxes, our banking transactions, and now we're hearing about tolls going to be constructed on the federal road. So these are issues Nigerians are talking about. We're going to focus on it. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back. Welcome back to Your View.
Thanks for staying with us. So the federal government recently announced the reintroduction of toll gates across federal highways in the country. Not too long ago, we've also witnessed different proposals of taxes from various ministries and agencies and departments of government. Even recently, on the floor of the Senate, a bill for an act to introduce tax on communication and cable television services scaled the first reading. With the level of poverty and hard economic crunch, Nigerians are beginning to groan at these policies. We'd like to hear your thoughts on this issue. You can call us on 070-8066-8014. You can also tweet to us at TVC Connect. Please hashtag YourViewTVC so we can read your tweets. Very soon, we're going to bring in a guest to help enlighten us more on this. But first, I'd like to hear your own thoughts on this. The issue of toll gates. Let me start with that, because many countries around the world have toll to help them with maintenance of these roads. Nigerians are saying that do the road first, then we'll not be adverse to toll. But they're saying, listen, the reason why the roads are the way they are is because we don't have the funds to maintain. So what are your thoughts when you heard about the fact that they want to begin to toll federal roads?
I was very, for me, first off, I thought it was a good idea immediately, because I feel that we should really have a system in place that's able to pay for our maintenance, because it seems like the government is overwhelmed with so many things that they're doing and we do not know where funds are coming from. But that's just on the face of it. But then, you know, to now go to history and find out that, you know, Obasanjo had scrapped this, and he gave quite, for me, in my own opinion, valid reasons why it was scrapped. So, so I used the opportunity to see why and to see if this government had put in his reasons into consideration in thinking about bringing this toll back. And he argued that at the time, 63 million was the money that would have been accrued from these tolls, and wasn't even enough to do much for maintenance of these roads in the first place. And so I'm saying, is this government, and then he talked about corruption, how usually these fees end up with, you know, syndicates and all sorts of people and not going back where it's meant to be. So I'm wondering, has this government put those things into consideration now? Because even Fashola himself said that the fact that we're bringing tolls should not immediately mean to Nigerians that their roads will be done. So that means there's a process. So why are we bringing this back right now?
Okay, let me come to Nima. Your thoughts on this issue of toll?
So for me, let's see what we'll be paying for first. Let's not do business in doubt. So the toll in Lekki, people pay willingly to pass it because they saw the construction, the road, and they saw...
That's an opera in the beginning. There was a huge...
No, there was, but when the roads were there and it was the best access to wherever they were going, people paid for it. So do the roads, let the roads be motorable, let them be car-worthy, and then we'll pay for them. The reason is because, yes, Obasanjo took away toll, and the reason he gave was lack of remittance, and this present government have decided that they want to bring back toll, and they decided that it will be by e-payment. So you pay in a way, they've mastered the way they will capture the money. We need the money. That's a fact. We need this money, but we need proper roads first.
Okay, let me come to you, talk about your thoughts
So,
on this.
yes, the government needs money, but what we haven't managed well. That's the fact. We've seen there are lots of leakages within the system and a lot of the largesse on the part of politicians that I'm wondering, why do you want me to suffer? Why do you want me to pay extra toll when you are not going through the stress of driving through those roads? You fly through everywhere. There are many private jet companies in Nigeria now, Murayo. The average politician is flying private jets from wherever. They're not facing the challenge we're going through. So you live large, you have money, and then you are multiplying the taxation on me as a Nigerian. Number one.
I'll come back to that, but when people are saying that we're just being emotional by continually stating that point of
view. The first thing that every leader would do before making any change is to make that sacrifice. I need to see that you're willing to pay the price also. They are not. That's one. Number two, we have a case of there was a fund increase in our fuel prices because of this. They feel that, okay, if you will not pay toll, then we would increase the fuel and move that money because we know that we can track this.
There was a 1%.
1% on every fuel price. Okay, so when you be collecting the 1%, what has the government done with the 1%? Yeah. Has it made our roads better? No. So if you have not given account of how you've spent the money you've had since, why are you expecting me to still willingly do that? And we have multiple
One of the
forms.
frustrations people who are progressive always have is that, listen, we continue to bemoan every attempt of the government to get revenue from us and to make developments available for us. For example, for NLC, for example, the Labour Company, every little thing of issue concerning salary reviews, Labour carries placard. No, you cannot do this. No, you cannot do that. The government is saying, listen, if we want us to actually fix, if we have enough money for infrastructural development, we have to actually begin to put our own money where our mouth is.
A true progressive will sacrifice. A true progressive will sacrifice until I see my government and my executive and my representatives at the House of Assembly and Legislature, until I see them making those sacrifices. Until I see them making those sacrifices, I will not be willing to do it.
So, until we Nigerians, because this is a democracy, and I'd like to be very practical, government should reduce spending. Spending based on our laws that are backed by laws have to be amended by the House and the people who put in the House. So the shortest distance for you is to travel to your representative within the National Assembly and first of all make sure that these changes happen. Already we cannot do that. As it is now, these are changes back. Anytime we talk about this, say, go and meet Ramfa, go and meet whatever. Yeah. These are laws that we need to change. So this is not something we need to talk about immediately. But the toll, government, on the Lagos-Badagry Expressway, do you know there are going to be tolls? They're already built. They are there already. If you get to really, I think there's one there already. So imagine that road was complete and we're just paying toll and you could get to Lagos in 15 minutes.
We all know that they are working on the Lagos-Badagry Expressway.
For how long?
We all know today. Listen, forever. So I totally agree with you. But as of today, they've actually collapsed a few lanes, right? We are seeing that they are working on the roads. So they're saying that once the roads are completed, the tolls come in. Would it be a problem at that time? No problem. Would it become a problem at that time after the roads have been constructed?
Fantastic.
I don't agree.
I think that I don't really have a problem with tolls, really. Okay. I think we should pay and I think that we can get better services when we pay for something,
right.
you know. But I just need them to be able to make sure that all the problems that we encountered the first time around, we will not be encountering, because the things with the toll is it also causes a lot of traffic. So I'm wondering, what is the government doing? Because the minister was saying that they are still looking into buying more land, and I'm guessing that is to expand the roads.
So the world definitely always have traffic. There's no way there's always that congestion, whether you like it or not.
So that is
the easy part
that's making transportation even worse for people. What you're supposed to do is ameliorate issues, not make it worse. So
let's move on, because we're going to bring in our guests very soon. Let's move on to other issue of taxes, because as I said, once Nigerians hear taxes, increment, salary review, they begin to scream. For example, the issue of power, they're talking about tariffs being increased from next year, and suddenly everybody's carrying placard. No, you cannot do that. But whether you like it or not, the discourse keeps saying there's they have the issue with the cost-reflective tariff, that what they're asking us to pay is totally far from what they actually cost, what their costs are. So let's come back to the issue of taxes. Why are we so adverse to paying taxes?
People will willingly pay when they see the results.
I think some taxes are...
But to see the results, you have to pay.
Okay.
So when I start paying my taxes, which I'm already paying, I am currently paying taxes, is part of what is used to be fund my politicians traveling abroad.
They're not enough of you paying, Tope. They're not enough of you paying.
If you take care of your current customers,
right,
you will get newer and better loyal customers.
Okay.
So far, they are not taking care of me.
Okay, strong point. But I believe that some of these taxes are misplaced. So when they proposed the VAT increase, some people say it was good. I thought it was good, but then I had the problem because, you know, it's going to fall back on the last consumer, which is, of course, the general public, the people who cannot afford it. But then they brought out this tax that Alundeme sponsored, a bill for an act to establish communication service tax.
Yes, let's hear that.
This bill, when I calculated it based on the voting in the Big Brother house, no, this is distributing it very well. There's going to be a very nice balance for people who are enjoying luxury and voting for the things that give them pleasure to pay.
Right.
But the person who has to buy baby food has to now pay the profit on the VAT. The person who is already struggling to feed baby.
Right. Right. Let's go on a break. When we come back, we're bringing our guests to help us enlighten us more on this issue of taxes and economic development. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back. Welcome back to Your View.
Thanks for staying with us. Joining us on the show today is a chartered accountant, Omotola Hassan, in the studio. Also in the studio in Abuja, we have Ajuri Ngalale, the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs. We'll come to you, Ajuri, a bit later, but we'd like to hear our guests' thoughts on this issue before we come to you, Ajuri. So, Omotola, we've been talking about the issue of taxation. Federal government wants to begin to build tolls on the federal roads, and people are saying, why taxes? You know, we are hearing the fact that they're going to be taxing even our phones, transactions, possible increase in tariff for next year. And Nigerians are saying, why? Well, economists are saying, if you don't tax, that many countries around the world, actually, Nigeria has the lowest taxing rate in the world, well, amongst the lowest. So how do we get out of this quagmire of ensuring that we have enough sufficient taxes to economic development?
Okay, let me start by saying that the intent of the federal government is in order.
Okay.
However, the method or the approach through which they are trying to achieve it is what somebody like me is not comfortable with.
Okay.
And that's the reason for the opera from the common Nigerians. Now, I said the intent is okay in the sense that the whole essence of all this proposal, if you look at it critically, is for revenue generation. And revenue generation is something very, very important for every company, every country, and every individual. Right. Of course, you don't want to maintain the same revenue this year and have the same thing next year. You want to do better. And going by the current happening in Nigeria now, based on the minimum wage of the thing, and what do I call it now? The fact that population is not going to remain the same also next year. There is need for an increase. We should anticipate that there's going to be an increase in the country's total expenditure at the end of 2020. So which means that the country also is looking at how to boost our revenue to ensure that all these expenditures are well covered. You know, when you're preparing budget, of course, revenue is something you have to pay particular attention to. There is no way you're going to pay your budget without paying attention to revenue because it dictates everything.
Yeah, but why must it come to us? Why can't they?
Yeah, I'm going to go to that. And that's why I said the approach through the federal government is trying to achieve that intent is what we're not comfortable with. Okay. Now, look at there's fiscal policy, Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 says that your budget deficit should be within the range of 3% GDP. And so if you're thinking of your expenditure increasing, you're also going to be thinking of revenue. So at the end of the day, even if you have a budget deficit, it's still within the range stipulated by FRA 2007. Now, and again, like you said, that every other country, if you look at their budgets, you will know that Nigeria is far behind. And of course, from the budget, you can tell the standard of living of the citizen of that country. Take, for instance, a neighboring country like South Africa. Their budget is way higher than what we have. Looking at the population, they are barely 58 million naira, and their budget is like
58 million people.
58 million people, sorry. And their budget is like $92,000. Now, compare that to Nigeria of 200 million population, and our budget is less than 20 million naira, $20 million. You understand? And looking at a country like Ghana, that our population is like, I think 15% of Nigerian population. But our, what's it called now? The budget, the difference between our budgets is nothing at all. Which means they make more provision for their population than Nigeria does. And that's the reason for revenue generation. We actually need to do something.
But you see,
so that I understand where you're coming from, and I totally agree with you that the burden is on the final consumer. The method through which they are trying to get all this revenue is actually on a common man like Nigeria.
But we knew about this. Why do Nigerians act as if we had no idea? When they were telling us that when they put together the budget, part of what FIRS was supposed to, their plan was to come to us for the taxes. They're saying that they cannot sustain the revenue from oil anymore. That tax, they're going to have to increase the tax net. Where was that tax going to come from? It's not from us.
No, the point is, if you see the result of the tax being collected, you'll be good. Do you understand? If I see what my tax is being used for, then I won't have reasons to complain.
No, I get this, what you just explained, where our budget just seems to be much lower than other countries, especially given our population. And I'm wondering why that is. Is it just because of insufficient revenue? And if it's because we do not have enough revenue, why do we seem to have so much when it comes to paying our recurrent expenditure? Why do we seem to have
so much to pay when our revenue is not?
Why is it difficult to make that, to make it a priority that, okay, we can't afford to run government this way. We need to cut the costs so that we can push in funds to other things that are more important, to infrastructure, so that the little that has been paid, we would see it. Because I remember in Galali, the last time I asked, he said, well, you need to raise tax and then you put into infrastructure, but we have done that over and over and over again.
And we're still not seeing the infrastructure.
What is making it so difficult?
And that's the angle I'm going to come from when it comes to recommending to the federal government that instead of you increasing or putting the burden on a common man, why don't you look at cutting down on our expenditure? Like, I think so there's something about the budget when it comes to the National Assembly. There's something we call statutory transfer. Statutory transfer is simply saying that the breakdown of the expenditure of the National Assembly is not required. They just come up with their own budget.
Really?
Yeah, they just come up with their own budget, and the total sum is sent to them. You don't even know the breakdown to say that this area should be cut down, so that we have more things to do when it comes to capital expenditure.
Some people disagree with our focus on the National Assembly, like that. If you look at the budget, what they get in the Assembly, both houses, is minute as compared to what the executives get. So they say, every time we hear of money, they'll say, oh, National Assembly, why don't we put that same binoculars on the executive, the ministers? What are they getting? Nobody talks about that. Do you agree? Or is it that we are facing the right people in talking to the National Assembly?
Well, I think I want to agree with that, saying that the attention is more on the Senate, the National Assembly, leaving behind some other people in power. I think I agree with that. And if there is anything to be done, maybe we should start probing every one of them's takings at the end of the month or at the end of the day.
So, based on order of priority, which of these taxes should come first? Because, you know, that's the way I see it. at
Why
least
did I keep
reduce
the
it, introduce it bit by bit. So in what order should we start to do these things? Because the CBN is asking now up the way to our POS payments, every level transfer. No, there's no transaction with the banks anymore that is free. Now we come to the VAT, now we have a telecommunication that we now want to start a toll gate. Exactly which one should we, in what order should we
I'm actually not
them?
comfortable with
or
any
everything,
of
just
them.
rush them at once.
I'm actually not comfortable with any of them. But if you want me to go for anyone at all, then I think I should start with the banking.
Okay.
When it comes to maximum amount of money you can keep with yourself, with yourself and all that, because that is going to help a great deal in minimizing the amount of cash we move around with, which of course is a good one for the carrier of the money. Of course, it reduces your exposure to risk or to attack. So I think if they want to start with any of the things, because
does that money go to the government? Because I know that there are multiple ways that the banks are taxing and profiting from us. But I'm wondering that do they really remit? Does this money, the stamp duty, goes directly to the government? Can the government let us know that, okay, this is what we've made in the past 4 years? Okay. Or since
I think the banks are taxed
stamp
as well.
duty, stamp duty is supposed to go straight to the government. Okay, so we have gotten so and so amount of stamp duty, and this is how we spent it. When we see that level of transparency from the government, people will be willing to commit to paying more.
Yes, I agree with you, and I think that is one area the government needs to look into.
Okay.
In helping the revenue.
Thank God we have Ajuri with us, because he's somebody I think can speak on behalf of the government. Since we're talking about the government, let me bring in Ajuri at this point. Ajuri, are you still there?
I am here, Mariah. Good morning.
Good morning
to the ladies, and good morning to our viewers.
Yes. So you've heard our conversation so far concerning issues of taxes. Nigerians are worried that we are continually being asked to pay taxes on various.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Mariah. Look, I'm very sensitive to Nigerians who say, well, why is it that we're being taxed if we're not seeing the kinds of services at the quality that we want to see them? I think that is an absolutely valid concern and reservation expressed by our people. And this is why I think when you look across sectors, there's a consistent thread. I'm going to start with the power sector, for example. As you mentioned earlier in the program, they talk about increasing the tariff, etc. Well, the federal government has been very, very clear in its position, not just the minister, but also at the level of the presidency, that our people should not pay for power that they are not receiving. That there is a mandate in place that meters must be provided to power consumers in the country. So it's that same idea. Look, our people are dignified, our people are pragmatic, and they're informed. They're not looking for handouts. What they're looking for are quality services. And if you provide those quality services, Nigerians are happy to pay, because for example, if power is being supplied, then they're not having to spend money on diesel and PMS for their generators at home, while now having to pay estimated billing for power that they're not receiving. So I think what in all of this is to say that if we provide the services and we remove the sharp practices, Nigerians are going to be very happy to pay whatever is required for that service. And I think what we're seeing on the part of the federal government is a determination to ensure that those sharp practices are removed. I mentioned in the power sector them saying no more estimated billing, that Nigerians should not pay for crazy bills anymore for power they're not consuming. And I think even if you look at the road sector, as you... Yeah. Yes, Mariah, please let me land my point, please. I would appeal to you to please allow me to land my point. I am not suggesting here this morning that every issue that is wrong in the power sector, for example, has been solved or corrected. We're not living in some sort of alternate universe. We're here, we see what's going on. So that's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is on the part of the federal government. The reason why we put in the meter asset provision scheme, for example, was to say we have to begin, these distribution companies must meter our people. They must meter our people. Our position is very clear. Now, do we have 100% compliance as of right now? No, because we have to obviously produce the meters and make sure that they get around the country. So obviously it's a progressive process, but what we're saying is we're not tolerant or accepting of the continuation of this estimated billing cycle that has been put in place over the past several years. But the larger point I was making is the thread is that in the road sector, we've been talking about tolling, for example. The federal government is saying, look, when we reintroduce these tolls, we're not reintroducing tolls on roads that are decrepit, that are washed out with huge potholes and are in terrible condition. What we're saying is that federal resources are being put into reconstructing key roads, like, for example, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway that you touched on. We all know that that was under a concession agreement for over 10 years. Nothing was done on that road until this administration came in and said, we're going to apply federal funds to build this road, expand this road, and then once that road is completed, we now need to maintain that road. And not only are we going to bring in the toll, but we're not going to do it like we used to do it, where they would collect cash and where you had all sorts of corruption and Nigerians didn't have confidence in how those funds were going to be utilized. What we're saying now is the tolling process is going to be made cashless to ensure that you don't have that human-to-human interaction and corruption as we want to maintain our roads.
Yes. My question immediately I was going to ask is about corruption and sharp practices, and I'm happy that you went that way. And for me, I feel that when it comes to taxes, shouldn't the government, we know that apart from getting people to pay taxes, apart from Nigerians not seeing what their taxes does for them, it's also that they are paying legitimate taxes as well as illegitimate taxes. So we have the problem with customs closing borders because of all sorts of sharp practices. Nigerians are suffering because these borders are closed. People are still paying, these illegal, illegitimate taxes. When it comes to NEPA, PHC, and as we just talked about, people are still paying extra. You talked about executive order. There's one thing about order, there's one thing about implementation and enforcement. You talked about compliance. We don't have 100% compliance. Who monitors compliance? What's the percentage of compliance? Who insists that, who makes sure that compliance, it's carried out? We say a lot, we speak a lot, we give a lot of orders, but we never follow through, and every time Nigerians suffer for this.
I've heard your comment. First of all, in the power sector, obviously, it's the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC. I would strongly advise that you bring on the CEO of NERC. I think he would be in a very strong position to answer your question in terms of compliance on the metering asset provision scheme and what more they can do to ensure that compliance is in place. But in terms of, look, in all of this, if we fix our roads, we always as Nigerians, we've always complained that our governments don't take maintenance seriously. That they build a new building, the building runs down after 10 years, then they spend more resources that we don't have to build another building, for example. Now the federal government is saying, look, there's no magic to this. If you go to the United States interstate highway system has tolling across it. If you go to Autobahn in Germany, it has tolling across it. There's only one way to maintain roads, and that is with tolling. The question is the process, and that is why it's this administration that has said we are going to do cashless tolling. The reason why, in terms of tax revenue, we're talking about tax revenue. One of the major reasons why FIRS generated the most revenue in 2018 than that agency has generated in our history is at 5.3 trillion naira is because of the increased trust that we're seeing in the system, because they've introduced ICT-driven innovations, which has reduced the amount of consultants that were coming in, these middlemen who are collecting taxes and making huge profits on the backs of Nigerians. We've taken all that out, and that is why, very quickly, from 2015, we had 13 million taxpayers, and right now we have over 20 million. That is more than 50% increase in only 4 years. It's because of that increased trust in the system.
One point taken, just
I don't think it is because of increased trust, Ajiri. I think think it's because we've been compelled to. Many people get into paying taxes screaming and dragged down there to pay the taxes. So it's really not that much of increased trust. But I want to ask you two questions. The average Nigerian is complaining about the heavy burden of taxes because they feel that there's no, they don't trust the willingness or the capacity of the system to do what they've promised. In that, if you have not spent your 10 naira well, why would I entrust you to spend 100,000 naira well? If the budget is reflecting heavy amount of money going to recurrent and very little going to the key sectors, like your educational sector is still getting 6% of funding. If they still get more money, it will still be getting 6% funding. The health sector is still getting minute amount of money as compared to what the Nigerians need. So when I'm paying those taxes, and I've seen that you have not managed the reforms you have well, in order of priority, the money that we have is still going to industries and is going into pockets that do not, in our own way, we're not feeling it. Why would I want to commit more to you by paying more taxes? That's one. Number two, is that we've been paying stamp duty for a while. And while you can refer me to another agency that will tell me what stamp duty has been used for, you are the one I have access to, and you're the one speaking for the president right now. Can you help us with the information of what the stamp duty being collected has been used for?
Okay. The stamp duty from banks. She wants to know how it's being utilized right now by the federal government.
Right. In terms of confidence, look, this is a very straightforward thing. If you look at the budget, one of the reasons why we had the controversy we had over the last 4 years in terms of budgets being delayed for 6 and 7 months was the president's insistence that because we have a high rate of recurrent and because this president is unwilling to sack civil servants around the country, given the level of challenge that people are facing around the country economically, essentially all of this billions of naira going into constituency projects is not going to help us. Why am I saying that? Because moving forward, all of the money that is going into capital is actually going into capital projects. That's why, for example, your crew is discussing the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the inconvenience on that road. The reason why there's inconvenience on that road is because that road is actually being constructed. I don't think Nigerians are looking at Lagos-Ibadan Expressway or the Second Niger Bridge or the Abuja-Kaduna-Kano Expressway and are asking themselves, are our tax naira and kobo being used well? They can see that for the first time there's actual construction going on around the country. Okay. So I don't think there's the kind of low level of confidence that you've mentioned, that there's actually construction and various services being provided around the country. In fact, I was just on a radio tour, very quickly, I was on a radio tour and I'm interacting with Nigerians. And what they're saying is, look, my vehicle is breaking down on these expressways. If there's a toll I'm going to pay to ensure that I have a world-class road to drive on, then I'm not putting that money into putting on a new bumper or new tires.
All right,
everything evens out, and Nigerians are wise enough to understand that.
Let me pause you for a second. Nima has a question. Go ahead.
Andrew, help Nigerians understand when Nigerian government partners with World Bank to do a particular stretch of roads, and I'm talking about the Badagry Expressway, for instance, and still want to put a toll gate there. At the end of the day, help Nigerians understand why they have to pay toll for a road that already World Bank has funded and yet they could not complete.
Did you get that? Ajiri, did you get that?
No, I'm sorry. You said the World Bank came in to partner the federal government, and what happened?
Nigerians understand when the World Bank partners with the federal government to do a particular stretch of road, and I'm talking about Badagry Expressway particularly now. Help Nigerians understand why the World Bank has funded a particular road that is incomplete because our government is not doing what they should, why they should pay toll on that road.
As far as I'm aware, the Lagos-Badagry Expressway construction has at least kickstarted. I don't know the progress of it. I don't want to speak on what I don't know about. But my understanding is that some contractors have already been mobilized to that site. But let me emphasize something very quickly. When we talk about external borrowing, for example, it is very clear in all of the borrowing plans exactly what money is going into what project and how each project is being funded. These are all transparent items for Nigerians to see. I think, if anything, if this administration has done anything, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
I said that's not what is on ground, unfortunately.
Okay. If this administration has done anything when it comes to budgeting, it has actually been the trillions of naira that we've lost, or the hundreds of billions of naira that we've lost in constituency projects that aren't even being executed, that are now going into projects. That's why you saw previous stalemates in the National Assembly, and that's why you're seeing a commitment on the part of this National Assembly to say, look, we are going to face the priority projects of the president. We're not going to cut funds allocated to critical federal projects on the basis of politics or on the basis of trying to stop the president from being reelected. Let me
put you on the break for a sec. When I come back, we'll get our guests to respond to all the things you just said. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back. Welcome back to Your View.
Thank you so much, Mariah. One of the reasons why I humbly and respectfully disagree with just a few members of the crew there is on the idea that Nigerians are paying taxes not because they have more faith in the system, but because they're being compelled to. I don't agree with that because I happen to be aware of the evolution of processes within the FIRS over the past 4 years, and you've alluded to it. Like you said, in the West, people are able to file their own taxes from the comfort of their own home and their own offices online. The FIRS has already brought that innovation to bear. One of the reasons why people around the country are having the kinds of trust in the system to pay their taxes is not just because they're being compelled. Obviously, they are being compelled, but it's also the ease with which they're doing it. We have to understand something. The way that we used to do tax collection in the country was essentially a manual process where the FIRS hires some tax consultant, right, that goes around the country and collects the taxes and takes a profit, a percentage of profit from the total tax collection. That was what was going on federally before. Under this administration, President Muhammadu Buhari said, no, we're going to do this automated, we're going to take out the middleman, and whatever we generate, people are going to know that they have contributed to a base in a way that is transparent. And that's what has happened. I think if you look at that, that's on the one end. You see it all across the country. The Corporate Affairs Commission, obviously we were doing 6 months to register our business before. Now it's under 48 hours because we've automated the process and we've taken out the human interaction, which is obviously what causes corruption. We're doing it across sectors. And I think in our analysis, I understand the frustration that Nigerians are feeling on these issues. They want the services and they want to pay taxes for services that they're receiving. It's very clear and it's very fair. But we need to be balanced in our opinions in terms of how we see these issues, because we need to acknowledge the progress even while we acknowledge that there's a ways to go. I think there's a consensus around the country. I'm talking about the people now. I'm not talking about government officials. There's clearly a consensus around the country that the cost of governance is far too high and that we need to do something drastic to reduce it. I think if you talk to officials behind closed doors, they would tell you that there's some legitimacy to that argument. Now the issue is this. The reality is that would require a constitutional amendment. There's no way around it. This isn't something that the president could just come out and say, this is what's going to happen and it's done. It's a constitutional amendment process. And as a result of that, there's no replacement or substitution for the pressure that citizens put on their representatives. You go abroad, go to the US, go to the UK where you have these representative democracies. What you find is that the legislators are moving on the basis of polling numbers, on the basis of what their citizens are calling in to tell them, and on the basis of what feedback they get from their citizens when they go to their constituencies. What I'm saying is that if our people all agree that we should have one chamber in the National Assembly and that we should do something drastic to reduce the cost of governance, let's put our money and our feet where our mouth is. Let's go and mobilize and make it happen, because that's the only way it's going to happen. It's not going to happen if we expect individuals who are in office to essentially say, you know what, let's reduce offices. That's not realistic. So I think we need to put pressure. And then the second thing I would say is we emphasize so much, and I understand it, but we emphasize so much on the federal government. We need to appreciate the fact that we are at a near 50-50 revenue split with the states and local governments. At what point do we ask the questions about the wrong expenditures or misappropriations or extravagant expenditures of state houses of assembly? We don't have enough pressure locally in the local governments on these institutions to ensure that our funds are well spent to provide services for Nigerians. Essentially, that communications tax that's being brought forward by Senator Ali Ndume is a 9% communications levy on text messages, calls, etc. Amongst the service providers. The service providers have already come out and kicked against it, but essentially Senator Ndume is saying that if we put in place this 9% telecommunications tax, we can generate 267 billion naira every year. Obviously, that is not a federal or an executive proposal. That is just from this senator, and he's putting it through the National Assembly because he is kicking against the value-added tax increase, and he's saying that this is a replacement for the VAT increase. The Federal Executive Council has been very clear that they don't believe that there's a substitute for the VAT increase. First of all, I think when we talk about the federal executive, look, I'm in the environment. I know how this works. The thing about it is this. Ministers are not known as having huge running costs. They're not known for having hundreds of aides. What they're known for is essentially whatever it is that they're getting. They have a salary that's published. They have ESTA codes that they take for travels, et cetera, which all officials have access to at some level. What we're saying is this. Where you have the kinds of wastage that we're talking about, go to some of these state governments. And I'm not talking about rich state governments. I'm not talking about River State or Lagos State. I'm talking about more poorer states like Yobe, like Sokoto, for example, where governors have 500 aides. What does any governor need 500 aides for? You're not going to see that anywhere in the federal executive. I'm saying to you that if you look at the federal executive, I'm asking you, where is this wastage? Where is it exactly? Because you have 42 ministers, right, which is the ceiling. Mr. President had 36 when we were in recession. Now, how many aides does each of those ministers have? I don't think that is a real governance strain. It never has been. Thank you very much, Mariah. Thank you to the ladies. Thank you.
Let me let you do a final word on this because I have to run off.
We're just broke.
Yes, for me, I think transparency is of utmost importance in all of this.
Yes.
If the government had been transparent enough, I don't think all this agitation will be experienced. You understand? And so if they feel that the budget they have for the executive is good enough, then they should clear it out.
Okay.
If they also feel that what they have for the National Assembly is not too much than what our budget can take care of, then they should flag it. Okay. So that we are all on the same page to see what is being spent on a yearly basis on each of these parastatals.
Also, I think Nigerians want information. And we can't depend on the information minister to tell us everything because, like, we have a jury saying, I cannot talk on this one, I cannot talk on that one. And I can't blame him, he's one person. So can we have every minister speaking up? Because I cannot assume.
Can we have every Nigerian reading online, can find information?
I am reading, but I don't have information.
Sometimes they'll tell you that, listen, Mariah, these things are available online, Nigerians just don't read. You want somebody to be constantly coming on TV or say, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Sometimes you actually need to seek for this information.
Mariah.
Okay, finally, before I run off, I have to say one thing because I had mentioned the issue of filing taxes. And I was corrected saying that we can file for personal income tax through the state government, not through federal. Federal actually taxes companies and institutions. So if we are happy and excited about the fact that you can file for taxes and get your returns, that's something you do through the local, the very individual states, so not the personal. LIRS, that's on Lagos State, and other internal revenue taxes organizations in the various states. Okay, that's all we can say. Thank you so much, Ma, for coming on the show today. The issue of taxes is ongoing. People are talking about it. People are worried. Now, some people trust in the systems. Others are saying they don't. Some are skeptical. But either way, we need to pay taxes at some point because we are one of the countries in the world not paying enough taxes. And we also need to see the government's part on being transparent that we're actually doing work because once people see work being done, they actually pay taxes. On that note, we have to end the show. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.